Thank you, Sam. Um, I'm going to be sharing today from a teaching that moved me very deeply this past week. It is a part of a course that I'm in, an IJS course taught by Sam Fine-Smith. So it's such a pleasure that Sam is hosting today, and I can thank him directly for inspiration. Um, I'm going to share a source sheet in just a minute. Thank you to Rachel. She'll do that. But I just wanted to let you know I'm going to be reading everything out loud if you can't see this one-page source sheet. So there's no worries about that. And more about the text and what Sam is helping us understand, guiding us as we are in this weekly class, this year-long class with IJS. So the first text that I'm going to share that Rabbi Hopstein, the Maggid of Koznitz, this is the Hasidic teacher that we're delving into his teachings over this year. This is a teaching that he brings that refers to last week's Torah portion. So Rabbi Hopstein says, and they here are Korach and his followers, this person who questioned Moses's authority and tried to kind of overturn decision making amongst the community. And that's from the book of Numbers, chapter 16. So they imagine they can govern themselves by their own will and power. This is the one who arrogantly declares, I shall reign, ani amloch. So Rabbi Hopstein is bringing a verse from elsewhere in the Jewish Bible, from the book of Kings. And he's connecting this to Korach and his followers. So he says, when we read, I shall reign, for this reason, he understands by linking these two texts together, the followers, Korach and his followers, dwell in the world of separation, Alma de Peruda. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Um, but first, a little bit about this verse that Rabbi Hopstein is bringing from the Book of Kings. So it was originally stated by one of King David's sons, who staged an illegitimate coup. You can read all about that in the first book of Kings. And so Rabbi Hopstein's being very intentional here, saying, if we are going about the world saying, I am in charge, I shall reign, I shall maybe do anything on our own, that we're inhabiting this world of Alma de Peruda. We're living out separation. We're living out in a separated way in our lives. So the Zohar, our great repository of Jewish mysticism, names this state of Alma de Peruda. It's a state, as Sam taught us this past week, that leads to fragmentation, competition, and separation. And in such a state, when we're in Alma de Peruda, we can't experience unity. So when we think about life and about meditation in particular, we observe that left to itself, our mind moves in circles, and it can create a feedback loop that reinforces the illusion of a separate self. I like to call this daisy chaining, right? That where I'm making these connections internally, often quite quickly, and before I know it, I've spun a web all internally in my own little circle, right? Not connected to anyone else or grounded in any type of connection, but it's all my internal bubble, as it were. So when this happens, we can notice that there's a lot of I, there's a lot of me, there's a lot of mine, and that our identity gets very kind of fixed and narrow. And that we can imagine ourselves to be completely in charge of this, right? Like it's up to us. This is the way we want things to be, or this is the way we imagine things to be. And it actually is separated from a greater context. So once we get in that place, we get kind of fixed. We're just saying out to the world, Ani am loch. I'm going to reign. This is the way it's going to be. And that can lead us to be dismissive of new ideas, new thoughts, new emotion, new observations that we might have. It can lead us to wanting to dominate, to strong arm, or to suppress other dissenting point of views. And it can even lead to destruction as we kind of pursue our desire, either consciously or subconsciously, for power and control. So, so I'd like to share in kind of an annotated way more of Sam's teaching here. When he says, Hasidic masters use the term alma de Peruta as a psychological or phenomenological term. It refers not just to the cosmic condition of separation from God, but to a mode of consciousness when the self perceives the world through ego, judgment, craving, or alienation. It's living in alma de Peruta. In contrast, the state of devekut, cleaving to God, allows us to live in or glimpse alma de Yehuda, the world of unification, where everything is unified in divine presence. And so Sam goes on to teach us through this teaching of Rabbi Hopstein's that this is an opportunity. Alma de Yehuda is like coming together like one person with one heart. So this is really what we're here to do today. This community, this IJS community, can be like one body, right? Like we're all connected for these 30 minutes that we sit together, learn and sit and come back together and to support each other. And one could argue that that unification that we have the opportunity to experience here today can go beyond the 30 minutes in this container. That in a sense, we have an opportunity for the boundary that can have us feel separated from others or from aspects of the world. That boundary can possibly dissolve for us. And so that's really the invitation today. And I'll conclude with the second paragraph here or the third paragraph of what I excerpted from Sam's teaching. When we gather in devotional communities with others cultivating non-dual awareness, we become like the limbs of a single body, distinct in function, yet inseparably whole. Rather than lording over one another, our desire is to support each other in deepening our recognition of the one who grants us the very awareness with which to serve. Having stepped out of the world of separation, we take joy not in domination, but in devotion to God and to each other. And I just want to pull out something that particularly struck me this time as I read Sam's teaching here. We are preparing our awareness so that we may be of service to each other and to the world. We're stepping into this oneness, the next minutes of quiet together, in order to prepare ourselves to step out more connected, more unified, and ready to take action, ready to be of service to a world and to individuals who are so sorely, so badly in need of that presence. So I invite you into this place where oneness can be possible, unity, as we bring our awareness to where our body, and thank you, Rachel, for sharing that text sheet. As we feel connection, maybe moving toward unity with our body hitting surfaces of our space, of the ground, of our floor, our furniture. Being aware that everyone on this call today in this spiritual container is connecting in some way with another surface in their own space. another part of their body as I feel my hands on my legs, my tush on my stool, my feet on the carpet. And I release of the idea that we might be separate, that we might be solely in charge, that we might be able to muscle our way into what we want. To release that and to open ourselves up to connection, to moving together, to unity. As we sit together for the next 11 minutes or so.
your friends. Susan rang a bell, but we may not have heard it. So you can stay in meditation or join us for Kaddish, or both. Who says you can't meditate while reciting Kaddish? So for those who are commemorating a loved one, a friend, someone dearly departed, you're welcome to drop the names of those people in the chat so we can acknowledge your loss. And you're invited to rise with me in body or spirit, or both. You recite Kaddish. Everyone who's not reciting Kaddish is invited to lend their loving, kind, compassionate presence and remain. Just offer a gesture of affirmation. So please join me in reciting Kaddish. Yitkadal
Yitkadal v'yitkadash me'rava. Allah divakir te v'yavich Hayachon v'yavachon Chaye Jacob v'Yisrael Agalah v'Yiru Amen. Yehi
Shemay Rabba
Rabba
Melma
Yitahvi Yitahvi Olam v'Yitaseh V'Yitador v'Yitala v'Yitala Shmei Jekashel V'Yitlu
Rifu
Ela min kol birchata v'shivata tishbachata nechamata zabiron bilma v'imru amen.
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 Shlama Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Shalom b'mermav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal Yisrael v'yal Yoshvei tevel v'imru amen.
Amen.
So I really just want to thank our teacher and guide today, Rabbi Susan Leider. We're going to be staying on for an additional 15 minutes for some questions and responses. If anyone wants to stay with us, you're most welcome. And if you have to take off now, we're wishing you all the very best and sending you prayers for well-being and resilience and wholeness. So thanks so much, Susan. I'm humbled by your choice of reflecting a teaching that I shared out into the world, but through your own perspective and experience. And I really want to keep the spotlight on you today as our teacher and guide. So if anyone has questions for Susan, you can write those in the chat, and please preface them with the word question in caps so that we can pull those out and not have to look for that needle in the haystack. Susan, before we go there, I just want to reflect back what I heard, which is that, Korach and his band of followers, because they had this kind of sense of separate selfhood that they weren't even aware of necessarily, that caused them to kind of fall into this feedback loop, right? Of I, me, and mine constantly reinforcing itself. They fell into a state of division and separation because each one of them wanted to reign. They each wanted the power. They each wanted to be sovereign. They wanted the control. And so they really weren't unified as a group. We can also fall and tend to fall into that state kind of reflexively, where the mind kind of spins a story about this person, right? And constantly tells the story of I, me, and mine. And in that way is constantly kind of reinforcing and strengthening and deepening the sense of being a separate self. But in reality, if we actually practice dveikut in meditation, and we actually pay close attention to our experience, we begin to see that actually the idea of separation is only an idea. It's not a reality. And that in truth, we exist in a state of inherent connection and interdependence with one another. And when we can relate to each other in that way and release the stronghold that our small sense of self kind of has on us, and then we're able to actually get together in a meaningful way and serve God, serve each other, serve the world with greater care and connection and compassion. So Susan, did I get that right? Just in terms of
Beautiful.
your teaching?
Beautiful.
Okay, great. Yeah, so, I just have a couple questions for you, and then we'll turn to participant questions. I just love to be in conversation with the guest teachers who come and teach us and guide us day by day. And you talked about this idea of a separate self, right? That is so kind of pervasive in the human mind. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how, in your experience, you're able to kind of see through that illusion and recognize that it's really just an idea, but not the real kind of nature of things. How does your practice support you in that work?
There's an example that I'll share that came up for me today. I began to reflect on someone in my life who is on hospice, very close person to me, and wondering about when I'm with them, how does a sense of separation creep in, right? Like, so I'm there, I'm doing my best to be present with this person. And what's the insidious nature of what kind of taps in and says, oh, there's this increasing gulf between you, or, whatever vision of separation that I might be beginning to feel. And as this was kind of waving through my practice today, I began to think about accepting the points of closeness and contact as being that, and not, I don't want to say it's just like focus on the good, but like in all that, what happens, I think, when that creeps in is it obscures what is. And then we begin to measure it. Like, well, maybe I'm not 100% present, or maybe that interaction wasn't 100% meaningful. And that's just can be, I don't know, insidious is the word I'm coming up for today, because it's just a creep that comes in. So that's an example that came up for me in my practice today, is how does separation look to me when it starts to tiptoe in, and then before I know it, it can take over.
That's such a beautiful example, and really demonstrates how we can kind of observe the sense of a small I in here, right, as separate from you out there, or the world out there, kind of creeping in real time, moment by moment, and actually observe this process happening. And we can notice the ways in which it causes us to become kind of caught up in self-referential judgments and the like. Really just such a beautiful example. And I also love this notion that the connection is what's inherently there, and then when this sense of separateness creeps in, it kind of obscures the inherent connection that's already there. Such a beautiful way of speaking about it. So clear. Wonderful. So just have one more question, and then we'll turn to participant questions. The teaching talks about the practice of dveikut, cleaving to the divine, as that which gives us access to Alma di Yichuda, the world of unification, right, of non-duality, the recognition that everything is interconnected and interpenetrating and interdependent. How do you experience your own practice as a practice in dveikut, cleaving to the divine?
I think for me, it's kind of moving tefillah, moving prayer, right? That idea of whatever time on the cushion there is, that can I move through life? I guess, to use your teaching, Sam, if I'm paraphrasing it correctly, is to be aware of awareness, which is so much of what we've been focusing on through this course. can I rest in that? I don't know. It's interesting because resting in the word dveikut sometimes makes me feel like a little bit like I'm falling short. Like, oh, okay, what if I'm not cleaving like 100%, right? That kind of feeling. But if I kind of translate that for myself as, oh, am I resting in it? Like, am I carrying this resting of awareness with me as I'm, in Trader Joe's or getting into the car or placing a phone call or I don't know, maybe that's dveikut in action or in motion. Yeah, so that's what I try to carry with me, I guess I would say.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And it's accessible, right? Maybe the idea of cleaving to God feels really kind of lofty and abstract and difficult, or unattainable. And what you're describing is just really down to earth, right? I can be aware that I'm aware.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So we have a couple questions here from the participants here. This is from Rana. Finding Alma de Peruda, right? The world of separation is a sticky wicket. We serve others, guide others, teach others, and learn from others because we are gifted with beautiful minds and egos. How do we find the balance? Is it perhaps a matter of intention and awareness? Our prayer that God will create in us a pure heart and true soul. Is it not about forever reminding myself that for me, the world was created and that I am but dust and ashes, right? So I'm hearing their real question about, on the one hand, if we recognize our inherent connection with everything that is, right, the sense of being a separate self might dissolve and disappear altogether if we go deeply enough into that recognition. And on the other hand, it's important to have a sense of self, right, a healthy sense of ego, so that we can actually serve other people, be in relationship with other people, act effectively in the world to make the world a better place. So how do we find that balance between those two extremes? And Ron, I hope I got the I hope I'm paraphrasing your question in the way that you intended to ask it.
You got a thumbs up on that, Sam. So, so I'll just say in answer to another question above, yes, these are Aramaic terms. And Sam can speak more to that, certainly. But this, I think the first place that it appeared was in the Zohar, but I'm ready to stand corrected on that. So by means of a quick story run, I will say I was speaking with someone yesterday who's in a great amount of pain in a communal setting. So this person has to be in this communal setting. There's a great deal of pain in this place and inside her, and she needs to be in that place. Like she can't choose to leave that place right now. We were talking about yesterday what it means to be with it, but not be it. And so for them being in this place and bearing witness to the pain and like not shutting it out and wishing it were different, but also not being that pain, not being that anger. That is a tall order, I think, what I'm saying, but that's something is really resonating with me. And by the way, it could be in a positive situation too, right? That we don't let our egos get carried away into we see joy or we see achievement or those things. But if we identify and we become that, then we're at risk for that alma de peruda, the world of separation.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So it sounds like it's just really important to be able to bear witness to, what's happening without being completely swept into it. That's been my experience too. And I think really makes for a kind of engaged spirituality. So thanks for that clarification, Susan. Just see, we have time for maybe one, maybe two more questions. Lori, the link to the source sheet should be in the chat if you scroll up, and I'll ask Rachel, who's on tech here behind the scenes, to post it again. Okay. This is from Michael Davis. I wish there were another word for dveikut. Cleaving seems to be too much like clinging or clutching or grabbing. Is there another word that could be more like immersed, melded, blended, or at one-ment?
I don't know, yichud is coming to mind for me, Sam. So yichud, the Hebrew for unification, and this Alma Yehuda, that's the Aramaic, this unified world. I don't know, I don't seem so put off by yichud as I do by dvekut. I don't know about Michael.
Yeah, that's helpful. I like that too. I like that term too. Yichud or echad or yachid, right? Unification, oneness, singularity. Those are really beautiful. Yeah. Michael, I'll just say also quickly that my sense is that, dvekut, which is related to the modern Hebrew word devek, glue, right? Originally is inspired by Genesis chapter 4, I believe, where Adam and Eve come together, right? And they come together as basar echad, a single body, a single corporate body. So the idea in Dvekut is that we're taking two things that seem separate, right? That appear to be separate, that have their own edges and boundaries. And through a practice of really kind of unifying the two in our consciousness, we discover that in fact they're a single corporate body, right? So I hope that maybe changes the valence of the term from one that's about clinging, right, in a kind of unhealthy way, and one that's more about kind of, dissolving apparent opposites or, apparent binaries or what have you. Of course, the language in the Torah is very binary in the sense of, focusing just on the male and the female gender, but on the other hand, it does have this sense of two separate bodies kind of merging as one, and specifically the human and the divine, right, becoming a singular entity or reality. Anything you want to add, Susan, before we say goodbye to everyone?
I'll just say very quickly, I don't want to open a Pandora's box, but Julie Cole had a great comment when she said she liked the word alignment. And part of what I carry with me today is the challenge of feeling connected to someone when I'm not aligned. And so again, that's the challenge for me. But that's what we carry with us today out into the world, off the cushion and into a different kind of practice.
Amen. And I'm hearing that as a prayer. So may it be so. And Susan, thanks so much for leading us with such clarity and skill and wisdom, compassion and heart. And look forward to having you back on the IJS Daily Sit soon.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. All the very best. Many blessings.